Hi everyone, and welcome to Technical and Professional Writing. This is our introduction to our entire class, and I am Professor Hall. So what we're going to be looking at today are the differences between technical writing and professional writing. Our class covers both. If you were to take this course at another institution, or if you're just watching this on YouTube and you're wondering, technical writing and professional writing are typically two different types of writing. Sometimes they overlap, and because of the overlaps, that's one of the reasons that at our institution we teach both together. But I'll be talking a little bit about the differences today between technical and professional writing. We'll also look at the differences between technical writing and creative writing, as well as expository writing, that's that classic college composition, the stuff that you have to do for courses like English and history and psychology and all those other fun classes. So let's get started. Ode to a Shoe. My son's tennis shoes rest temporarily in a heap against the kitchen door, their laces soiled, their tongues hanging out like exhausted terriers. The soles worn down on the insides from sliding into second are green, the shades of summer. Canvas exteriors, once pristine white, are the colors of the rainbow. Sun-bleached, mud-splattered, rained-on, ketchup and mustard adorned, each shoe shouting a child's joyous exuberance, "I'm alive." This is a really beautiful piece of writing. I wish I had the author's name, and I don't, unfortunately, but it has a sense, it's evocative, is the word I'd like to use, meaning that when we read this, it brings about emotions. There is a lot of imagery here. We have the simile, the tongues hanging out like exhausted terriers, so that's a really interesting comparison, and it makes you feel this interesting sense of nostalgia and perhaps joy at the same time while reading it. In comparison, a piece of technical writing is not going to be emotionally evocative, meaning that it's not really going to bring out any emotion in the reader, usually. So here is our example. Technical specifications for manufacturing tennis shoes. The D40 Slammer tennis shoe will be manufactured to the following specifications. Now, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the neoprene rubber is listed, the type of texture on the sole. The uppers are blue, the tongues are white. They have the oval Slammer logo, heat pressure sealed, centered, and half an inch from all sides. Now, that's a really different description. I'm going to circle it here. It's quite a different description, right, than this, the tongues hanging out like panting dogs, like exhausted terriers, right? This one gives you an interesting comparison for you to picture the shoe in your mind while you're reading, whereas this one is really meant for an audience probably of people who are making the shoe, right? They have to know what type of canvas to use. They have to know how far from all sides the logo must go, all of that kind of information. So that is, we're going to be talking a lot about technical writing, but I think this is a really nice image in a way to capture the difference between tech writing and other types of writing. Now, I will say that don't worry as you're watching this and think that we're going to be writing things like technical specifications. We're not. And I actually think that there is some room for creativity in technical writing. It's just a different type of creativity. So instead of looking for similes and metaphors and emotionally charged imagery, you're going to be looking at other things like how to best reach your audience, how to word things in the most clear way possible, how to write short sentences so that your audience can get the point right away. It can be more fun, I think, than it sounds. So let's take a look at this sort of emotional evocativeness. And my highlights are already here for us. So on this continuum, on one end, up here at the top, we have connotative or expressive. Connotative basically means that a word has a connotation. When we say that, it means that we have other meanings that are associated with that word. So if I say something like fat, fat is a word that literally means a type of nutrient that has 9 calories per gram. That's it, right? But I'm guessing that when I said the word fat, that's not what a lot of people thought of. So some of you might have been like, but I'm fat, as I sort of did in my own mind. Some of you might have thought, oh, fat, that's bad. Because we have a connotation in our culture that fat is bad, even though it's a nutrient that we need for our bodies and our brains, right? So that kind of thing, a word meaning a little bit more or being used in a way that means a little bit more is done often in creative writing, like the piece I just read. So we have something there that is describing a shoe, but it's describing it in an emotionally charged way, and it's quite expressive. It's quite personal in a way. So creative writing has expressive words, fictional characters, imagery, and plots. If you've taken creative writing with us at SUNY Schenectady, you learned probably how to write dialogue, how to create an in-depth character, how to create a plot that really grabs the attention of your reader. If that sounds fun to you, I sometimes teach that class, so look for that coming soon. But other expressive writing is sort of high on this continuum as well. Nowadays, a lot of times we call it creative nonfiction, meaning things like narratives, descriptions. These are based most of the time on personal experience. So it still has that use of those connotative or expressive words, but it's a little bit more subjective based on the person's personal experience. So something like a memoir would fit into this. Travel writing, a lot of times, that's a description. It's a little bit more interesting and personal, right? Here's where I've been. Here's where you should go. You should try this out. It's not just informative. So a lot of times it is falls into that expressive category. Expository writing, which we have right in the middle, the reason that it's in the middle is because it's a combination of objective, which we have down here, and subjective. Again, subjective is based on your personal experience. Objective is when you kind of remove yourself from that situation. So a lot of college composition is based in this, argument and persuasion. You are trying to persuade your audience. You have a reason for arguing. You are trying to prove your point. Comparison and contrast, doing an analysis, cause and effect. Again, if you've taken a history class, cause and effect is something that you look at a lot, right? So then we come down to journalism, which is not right now for most of us, but should be more factual in its observation. So good journalism is objective. It's short paragraphs and sentences. Sometimes there might be some connotative words in there. So some, depending on the site, the website you're reading, or the news feed that you're watching, or the podcast that you're listening to, if they use a word like liberal or conservative, are they using that in an objective way, or do they have an expressive way of using that? Are they saying someone so-and-so is a dumb liberal, or so-and-so is an uptight conservative, or the opposite way around, right? A lot of times journalism, and lately, has fallen into that, and it's kind of creeping up the continuum a little bit. But it should be more objective. And then we come to technical writing. And technical writing, which is the basis of our course, includes things like memos, letters, reports, instructions, resumes, web pages. This is professional writing as well. Here it's kind of all lumped together. But technical writing is really very objective. So you are taking your personal feelings out of the situation. It has very short sentences and paragraphs, and where you're using words in a denotative way, meaning that you're using words literally what they mean without any of the emotion behind them. So a traditional view of technical writing. Traditionally, technical writing was reserved for the practice of documenting a process. So a software manual or instructional materials. I've got one here for you. You can see here are all the safety measures. Don't use the oven to heat the room. Don't submerge the cord or plug it in water. Keep the power cord away from heated surfaces, right? That is traditionally what technical writing looked like. The nice thing is, writers would create manuals for different audiences. So, for example, a technical writer might write a manual for an expert on how to repair a television. They would also write the instructions for the layperson or non-expert on how to use the TV. So something for the expert might be about, putting a particular cord into a particular space and what to do if that cord frayed, right, inside the TV. For the layperson, the non-expert, it would be something like, here's how you set the time, right? Here's how you hook it up to Roku, or here's how you hook it up if you want to screencast from your computer screen. Those would be the instructions for a non-expert. Manual writing is now really a small part of technical writing, and this course is meant to be an introduction to technical writing. If you go on for a degree in technical writing, it will get much more in depth onto how to do a lot more intricate types of writing. We are going to look for a little bit at manual writing, and we're going to look at some other types of tech writing, but the nice thing is that manual writing is really just a small part, and if you were to get a job in that, it could be a small part of your job, but a lot of times your job would include other things as well, whereas years ago it really wouldn't. So technical communications overall, the format of tech writing is no longer bound to lengthy user manuals. The three primary purposes of technical writing: to inform, to instruct, and it says to persuade here, but I think, one of the words, I'm going to switch over here to white if I can, so I can write better. To persuade, a lot of times this is in the form of a proposal. So you're really saying, my purpose is to propose something. And I am writing with a mouse, so you're going to have to give me just a second. I have a pen, but it's broken. So sometimes it's to propose something, and sometimes it is to recommend. There we go. It's a little bit better. So to propose or to recommend. So the persuasion that you are doing is not the same as the persuasion that you were taught in college composition, where you're creating an argument using rhetoric. Rhetoric is really left out here except for logos. Any proposal or recommendation has to be based in logic, and we're going to talk about that more as the course goes on. But if you struggled with those, if you learned about logos and ethos and pathos, here with tech writing, logos is king. It's all about logic for the most part. So today, technical writing includes many types of communication. So beyond just manual writing, things like reports, executive summary statements, briefs, proposals, emails, policies, press releases, and more. What we're going to do in this class is talk a little bit about that professional writing first, and we're going to look at things like professional writing overall, how you can improve your professionalism as you write. We're going to look at emails and memos. And then we're going to go into some more technical documents, so things like a report, a proposal, that kind of thing. Technical information is distilled and presented in a clear, concise manner, really no matter what type of communication you're putting forward. So if you were in college composition and you hated having to try to fill pages and pages, That's not really the point of technical writing. The point of technical writing is to say as much as possible in as few words as possible. So making each word count and going for quality over quantity. And I think that's one of the things that people who enjoy this class really, really like about tech writing, that if you have a logical brain, this is going to be great for you. And if you don't, that's okay, because you can learn how to put things more logically and how to not ramble and how to organize your thoughts and ideas and then get your ideas across to the audience. So a little bit more about academic versus technical writing. Technical writing clarifies information. As I just said, a lot of times you're instructing people how to do something. You're putting forth a proposal where maybe a supervisor has asked you to propose a new process or propose a new product. Academic writing describes, compares, contrasts, and argues, and this is, I think, the important thing to note here, in a way that encourages further debate, discussion, and study. For most of the time, for technical writing, that is not really the point. The point is to clarify the information. Now, sometimes if you're doing a recommendation or a feasibility report, which we'll talk about later on in the course, then yes, as a company, they may need to discuss your recommendations, they may need to debate them, they may need to look further or do further research, but you're still clarifying the issue for them. You're not bringing up a topic just to talk about it more and think about it more and think about the consequences. Technical writing is intended for a specific audience. So here are some examples. A fashion merchandiser receives a report regarding how much a garment might cost to make, which is, if you're in business, knowing how much your product costs is going to be really important. You want to know how much you should sell it for after that. An architect receives a feasibility study regarding the land she plans to develop. So, can I build on this land? We had an incident at a place where I worked where they wanted to build a stadium, and they did, and they forgot to put in drainage because they had not done a complete feasibility study. Then they had to rebuild the entire thing, which was a really big problem, and it flooded out in the meantime. An end user for a cell phone. So an end user means the person who eventually buys the product and has it in their home. If you've gotten a cell phone, right, it comes with a manual, either online or maybe with the actual phone. Here's how you use it. Here's how you download apps. All of that kind of information. So you can see how each one of those is really intended for a very specific audience. Academic writing is a little bit different. It's really intended, well, first for your professor if you're in school, but even if you're not, other people who are in the fields of academia. So if you are writing in biology, you're writing for other biologists, right? To say, I did this study, I think that it applies to this particular drug, and I think that here's how the drug is having side effects. And then other people will also study that drug and see if the side effects occur in their population that they studied, right? Again, encouraging further debate and discussion. So I think another reason that a lot of people, I believe, and have told me at least, like this course, is because it's a little bit, to them, it's a little bit more practical, because you are writing things that are sort of for me to look at and grade, but ultimately I'm preparing you to write things for specific audiences in whatever career you are going into. So we have a lot of people in this course who are in writing and want to maybe go into technical writing, or at least do technical writing part-time, and we have other people who are looking at things like computer science, where you're going to have to write end user things for a computer user, or I'm trying to think right now. I think we have a lot of people in here who are in accounting, where technical writing is important so that people can understand, for example, how to file their taxes. We have more people in here who are looking at bank fraud and how to prevent that, right? Getting a certificate in that. And still other people are going into childcare, which is, it's an interesting class for teachers, I think, because it can help you to learn how to communicate with parents or with the community, write policies, for example. So the nice thing, again, about this class is that you're really learning how to hit those target audiences. And you're not just writing this for an academic purpose where, your writing goes to an instructor. And then you might not necessarily use that type of writing after college. Technical writing uses short, clear explanations and simple sentence structures, as evidenced by the technical writing bullets there. And academic writing is elaborate with long explanations and complex sentence structures. And I will say that, obviously, I don't think that there's anything wrong with academic writing. I just think that there are some people who really like academic writing, and there are some people who like technical writing. And I have found that a lot of times they don't overlap quite as much because it's really quite different. So this has to do with language differences, elaborate words, transitions is something that you probably worked on a lot in college composition, subjective, which we talked about, multiple meanings, whereas the words in technical writing, we're going to talk about using more active vocabulary, plain, easily understood, objective, non-sexist, not using pronouns, that kind of thing, and really uncomplicated. We're going to actually talk about cutting repetition, which it should say in front of it and doesn't, and how to use active voice as well as active vocabulary. So excessive words, embellishments, synonyms, passive voice, complex sentence structures. In this class, we're leaving all that behind. If you really like that type of writing that I'm describing here on the left, I also teach College Composition Part 2, and we get a lot more intensive into different types of academic writing. So if you are one of those people that really wants to encourage debate in a field, it's a great class for that. And you can take that as well, alongside this one, or after. So, technical writing versus essays. Beyond just language. When you're developing it, tech writing uses examples, anecdotes, testimony, research, and data. The same as other college essays. Grammar is still going to be important. Sorry for those of you who hate it, or who, a lot of times people think that grammar is their main issue, and I think most of the time it has more to do with clarity. But we are going to do a unit on grammar, and I'm going to try to clarify any grammar problems that you might have, and some of the more intricate rules to grammar and punctuation. Organization. Technical writing, like an essay, has an introduction, a body, and conclusion. A lot of times it'll use a subject line instead of a thesis, and it'll have an itemization of points, kind of like this, right, where we have bullet points instead of transitional words. The document design, which is down here at the bottom, we're going to talk about all of these things, but headings and subheadings are really going to be important. So instead of using a thesis statement, transitional words, topic sentences, as you do here in your essays, you're really going to have headings, subheadings, again, for clarity, right? You're breaking things down into parts so that people can kind of skim your document, read it quickly. I think one of the biggest things with audience in technical writing and professional writing is that you're respecting their time. And having a heading and a subheading with different fonts, using bullet points, helps people to get the information as quickly and clearly as you can give it. We talked about this already. Style: short words, short sentences, short paragraphs. Longer words, longer sentences, and longer paragraphs. So the style is quite different. And so is the document design. And we'll talk about different document designs as we go. So in terms of the development, Examples, anecdotes, testimony, research, that's going to be the same. Same thing for grammar. The organization is a little bit different, and then the style is really quite different. Taking your style out almost completely, or at least the expression of yourself. So what about professional writing? I mentioned before that we were doing both in this class. Well, professional writing does consider audience. This is going to be people inside your organization or people outside your organization. The audience is going to be diverse, so your content and your tone might change. For example, you might write an email in a friendly tone, but then you might write a memo in a more formal tone, possibly even to the same person. The email might be to, let's say over here, from the doctor to his nurse or physician assistant. Maybe he's just checking in on what time she's going to be in the morning, right? That's a friendly email. The memo might be in a much more formal tone. So it shifts a little bit. And we're going to talk about tone and how to have a professional tone later on in the class. Professional writing, your intended audience changes the tone. Technical writing, on the other hand, really doesn't change in tone that much. It's going to always be neutral, informative, and competent. Those are our 3 key words. And I think, this is the beauty of this class. If you feel like you've struggled with writing before, maybe, how can I be informative and competent? How can I be neutral and keep my emotions out of my writing? It's the class for you. The purpose of professional writing might also change. So the purpose of technical writing is going to be to clearly and effectively explain something. Purpose of professional writing is going to change depending on what type of writing you're producing. So in that sense, in terms of, and hopefully you talked about this in your other writing classes, so in terms of audience purpose and tone, in technical writing, you're really writing most of the time to a specific audience, depending on your document and who it's intended for. But it's always going to be neutral, informative, competent, and your purpose is going to be to clearly and effectively explain something, right? In tech writing, that's the case. In professional writing, it's going to change. Sometimes you're persuading, sometimes you're expressing, sometimes you're informing. So, as a recap, this course covers technical and professional writing. Elements of writing such as content, clarity, and organization are going to still be important, but they're going to look different than they did on the academic essays you've written for other classes. We're going to examine different types of writing, including manuals, memos, proposals, and reports. And we'll discuss how the style of technical and professional writing we'll discuss the style of technical and professional writing, focusing on elements such as organization, audience, purpose, tone, clarity, active voice, and conciseness. So we'll look at some of the building blocks first, looking at things like audience, purpose, tone, clarity, and grammar. And then we're going to go into types of professional writing, things like emails, resumes, memos, cover letters, persuasive letters, that kind of thing. And business letters, that kind of thing. And then we're going to move into some of the more technical documents. So doing an informative report, doing a feasibility study, proposal, manual writing, those kinds of documents. So this is going to be a great class. I really look forward to getting to know you guys and to reading your work. And I will see you soon. Thanks.